So there's a big peak, and they all make a big giant hump that goes up over the top of that. And underneath that hump is a low pressure region, and that's what lifts the wing and makes the whole thing fly. See if I can.
Wait. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's just. So
I'm
here's.
trying to find a better.
Here's
picture.
my rectangle flying through space. Now, it's not space because it's not a vacuum, right?
Right, it's air.
Yes, there are particles, surrounded by particles, right? So I'm flying through space and I'm making a nice shear, right? So as I'm shearing through the middle of particles, the particles get pushed. Like when you pull up on a semi truck on the freeway, the air.
Yeah.
Right.
This is an important point because you don't actually make a nice shear.
So
What you make?
Diagram 1, diagram 2. So the particles are flying mostly
That's
horizontally. Okay, that's okay. Shh, it's fine.
No, stop, because you're not.
It's fine. So let me
this
just.
One's better.
You gotta walk me through it. You're an aerospace engineer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, let me talk.
The particles. Frankly, first of all, there's wind, right? So if there wasn't wind, you'd just be flying through stationary particles and then pushing those particles around as you're flying through them, right? And then when you change your trajectory, so diagram 3, when I change my trajectory, now I'm flying. So
this is a good one.
So if those particles were stationary still, and I'm flying at an angle, say I'm flying at a 35 or 15 or 35 degree angle into air particles.
All right, this one is one where the streamline's right.
How do you achieve lift? This is what it's
Look,
all about.
I'll show you.
Right?
Look at this picture.
All right, this is what it's all about. How do you achieve
lift? Dog out or what?
How do you achieve lift?
Look at the picture that I just posted.
With a wing, right?
Right. Look at the picture that I just posted.
Okay, Jesus, Jiminy Christmas. What do we got going on here? That's like an evil eye.
All right. So you see how there's a rainbow to the lines? That's because the black line is the highest pressure, and then every color as it changes down the rainbow is lower pressure. So they're using that to show you the pressure gradient. Okay. Before this airfoil passed through this square, all of these streamlines were horizontal. They were completely flat
and at the
side to side.
The same color, right?
And the same color, exactly right.
Okay. Yeah. So there's the disturbing.
Right now, this airfoil passes through this air. You see how underneath the airfoil, the streamlines get farther and farther apart, right?
So it's like
so there's a gradient there, right? That's pushing up on the bottom. There's a high pressure gradient that's pushing up on the bottom. But what's really happening is you see on top how they curve over the top, and they start to curve. Notice out in front of the wing how they start to curve over the top before they ever contact the wing. Right? That's a property of what we call incompressible flow. Flow below the speed of sound. The flow actually knows you're coming.
Well, how fast is this airfoil moving?
Below the speed of sound.
Okay. So what happens is the speed of sound is different. It's a whole
At the speed of sound, the shock wave impinges directly upon the surface, and it makes a straight line. Here, I'll show you the picture. It's a good one. It's a good difference to understand.
Good Lord. So the issue is that as it disrupts the
you know what I want.
Particles in front of it, it creates basically it's a vacuum underneath it, right? So it's sort of
No, it creates a high pressure underneath it and a vacuum behind it. It creates a vacuum above it. That's actually what I'm trying to tell you is that
Yeah, I'm with you.
makes, okay?
I'm with
So
you. I'm with you.
now look at, oh, here's a nice one. Here's an illustration of the differences between the two types of flow. Copy image address.
This. We're sciencing
Yeah, we scienced the fuck out of this shit. This is fucking degree here, dude.
Looks like a sperm.
Yeah.
Flying
That's what it is. All
space.
right, see the top ones?
Oh, there's formulas. You lost me. Okay, now go ahead. That's fine.
See the top one? The top ones are
left.
airfoil. Those are incompressible flow. That's below the speed of sound. See how it says M less than 1? M less than 1. But look how on the top right one, right?
Right. Shockwave.
Yeah. See, okay. So top left.
Coming off of it.
Yeah. Look at the top left picture. See the sign that says velocity, and then it says M is less than 0.8.
Less.
Right.
Wait. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. That means
right there.
Flow up to about 80% of the speed of sound.
What is the?
And when you get up to about 80% of the speed of sound, that's about.
Oh, it's 0.8
level. You're talking about 500 and something miles an hour.
It's 0.8
right? Over 500.
0.8 means you 0.8 the speed of sound. So you're not quite there.
Yeah, 80% of the speed of sound, and the speed of sound is 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you see how that airfoil, right?
Hang on. Okay. Yep.
In the top, we're looking at the top left one. Okay.
Top left. Okay, so over here.
Top left, right? 80%, right? The airspeed is less than 80% of Mach 1, right?
Is that what Mach?
So
is that
what they're showing you is that even in that condition.
Oh, that's what Mach 1 is?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't
Mach 1 is just the speed of sound at sea level, right? And we call it we divide it by its own speed we divide sound by its own speed at sea level to make it unity, so that when the altitude changes and the air density changes, the speed of sound goes up. But we want it to be related to a fixed number, which is always the speed of sound at sea level.
At sea, so where
at sea, because we're human beings, and it's at sea level is like a nominal flight. Sea level is a recorded density. It's a baseline that we use all the time in air measurements. So when you measure the speed of sound, you measure it at sea level, even though you might be flying at 30,000 feet. You then have to relate your speed to the speed of sound at sea level by doing a pressure density calculation. Which you don't need to know that. Just understand that the speed of sound at sea level is about 750 miles an hour, and maybe a little less.
That's pretty fast.
It's pretty fast, right? So that 80%.
0.8.
You're still talking like over 500 miles an hour, right?
0.8
so
about
all flight regimes, like we're talking normal flight, any flight you've ever been on, okay, has been at this 80% or less number, okay? Because you've never been in a military jet fighter, you've never been on the Concorde.
No, the only
some of the new some of the new
I've
planes
ever been on was in a dual engine fucking Duchess. I don't know if you know what a Duchess is. It's a civilian aircraft. Military. And I was flying with Soda and my brother, who's a pilot. And we were cruising around the area. See, he was trying to get his license. And you got to log so many, pilot hours, whatever. And so we're on approach to the airport coming back, right? So we're cruising around. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. You're looking out the window. You're looking down. You can't tell what the fuck is what looking out of an aircraft at the ground. So he's telling me we're right over such and such area or this road or whatever. And I'm like, you can't fucking tell at all. You don't know who the fuck
You have to
you are.
train yourself to look.
Yeah, because
So
all
what kind of
the
that was a
tree
propeller
covers all
of an
the
aircraft?
shit. And then I goes, we're on approach to the airport. He goes, we got the headsets on, because you can't just talk in a cab. You got cabin,
Yeah.
and you got the headsets on, and so we're talking in the headsets, and he goes, nobody
Yeah,
talk,
Beechcraft.
nobody
Duchess.
talk, nobody talk. And we're like, oh,
So
okay.
your top speed there was 197 miles an hour, and that's in a dive.
I don't
Your
know.
cruise speed is 182. So you
Well,
were probably doing normally about 160 miles an hour. So you're well below that 0.8.
my point is that we all could have died because my brother. I goes, so you gonna let me land this thing, huh? And he goes, yeah, sure. And takes his hands off the controls. Because he's a dick. He's my brother. That's what he does. He's an asshole. And I'm like, oh Jesus Christ! Grab the controls. I'm riding shotgun in the airplane. There's two. The
Yeah.
cockpit has two positions, and I grab the controls and it's like, it's like you're in a fucking TIE fighter or something. Immediately, what you want to do is just jam the controls around, see what happens. But I'm like, I mean, my dad's in the back.
You're actually, when you grab the controls, you're supposed to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, I grab the controls, and it's not a flight stick. It's like the dual, with
it's a little wheel. Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't a wheel. It was, and I just gave it a little push forward, gave it a little pullback, and my brother's like, yeah, whatever. He's completely nonplussed by anything that I'm doing. He's like, that's fine. I turn around and look at Soda, and he's like stressing the fuck out. Why?
Yeah, he probably had you up around 8,000 feet. You had tons of time to fall, maybe higher.
Oh yeah,
so there's almost nothing you can do. That little plane, it's almost impossible to make that plane fall out of the sky once it's at speed. You have to actually work really hard. Like, you couldn't have landed that thing if you tried because you weren't messing with the throttle.
Actually,
to get it to land, you got
to allow me to continue my story.
Yeah. Did you actually land the plane? I'll be impressed if you landed it.
Well, here's what happened. So I'm on approach to the airport. It's a small airport. Not a podunk airport. It actually does a lot of traffic. It's in Flint, Michigan, Bishop Airport.
Yeah.
I recommend you visit.
You work for the Chamber of Commerce now?
So he's on the radio talking to the tower, and we can all hear everything he's saying, and he's like, nobody talk, because it's an open comm. He's like,
right, it's an open channel, right?
Talk. And they're like giving him instructions, so he's telling me, go this way. I'm like, okay, this way.
Right, turn around until the compass says this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I basically like do a turn, come around, and it's like
come right to 320. Yep.
Yeah, and he's watching the controls, like come around this way to. Basically, what had happened was, I find myself on approach to land at Bishop Airport in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
And my brother's hands are not on the controls, and he's like, here's what you want to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I look over at Soda, and he's like, looking to see if there's any parachutes. And my brother tells me, what you want to do is actually grab that thing right there. That's the throttle. You want to increase the throttle. And so it's like, he's like, okay. He's like, just push it forward until it gets to, and you'd think when you're landing an airplane, you'd slow down,
Uh-huh.
Kind of slow down a little bit. Now, you speed up.
Yeah, well, did you change the weight? Does he got a trim adjustment?
Yes, it all comes back to what you're explaining to us now.
Yes.
You have to speed up, and I'm looking out the window, and all I see is landing strip. I don't see sky. And he's like, don't look out the window. Don't look out the window. Look at the artificial horizon. Do you remember that movie, So I Married an Ex-Murderer?
Yeah, vaguely.
And he's... Who's that guy? Who's that comedian? that's like really
Mike Myers.
not well. Mike Myers is in it, but there's that one guy who's got like the really dry sense of humor. What's that motherfucker's name? He's the pilot, and he's like, have you ever flown? Well, it wasn't Mike Myers in the plane. It was this other dude in the movie, and he was like, how do you know where you're going? He's like, well, I've got the artificial horizon, which is actually better than the real horizon. It was the dude from Reservoir Dogs. Gay Billy's super sounds of the 70s.
Oh, Stephen Wright.
Yeah, that guy. He was the pilot, and he's like, the artificial horizon is actually better than the real horizon. So I'm punching the throttle, and he's like, push the stick, and you gotta keep. We're looking at there's literally like you're in a flight simulator. The thing, where the horizon is, and he's like, yep, just let it go there, and it's. I feel like I'm pointing straight at the nose diving towards the landing strip, and I'm like, wow, this is how my brother wanted to kill me, so it's gonna take all of us out in one shot. Like you look up at the windshield, right? And you're pointing straight at the ground. And he's like, don't look out the window. You're gonna freak yourself out. Don't look out the window. Watch the artificial horizon. I'm like, Jesus Christ, fucking mighty. And literally, he didn't touch the controls at all. I landed this motherfucker, and we came in, and you hit the ground, and you're like, boop. And he's like, wow, that was actually really good.
Yeah, because he fucking told you what to do the whole time. He landed the plane. He just flew it through you. That's all. Which is good. That's how you teach people how to fly. I can't do that shit.
Freaked me the fuck out.
I bet.
Yep. And also, that's the only fucking time I've ever actually been on a plane. When I was a kid, we got on a plane once and then got right back off it.
Oh, yeah? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. My dad just thought it'd be fun to put all the kids on a plane. Just gotta get out of the plane. Yeah, had some deal worked out with some guy somewhere.
I see.
What's this trailing edge shock?
Okay, so
where were we?
During normal flight, like that flight you were talking about, you're below 8/10. So you see how the airflow goes up and over the top, and it also makes that bump below, right? And that's what makes you fly, is those difference in pressure. But see how the speed over the back is still when you're
diagram in the upper left here
is the top left.
Okay.
See how when your forward velocity is below the speed of sound, the flow over the top of the wing actually hits the speed of sound. Like it increases to get over. Like
bump.
Right. Okay. So it tries to speed up because it's still connected to the other air. It's not actually that you split the air in half. It's that the air is all still connected. And it's still, because it's not compressible and you're moving below the speed of sound, it's telling particles in contact with your wing are telling other particles far away from your wing information about the pressure. Like, that's the only real way to describe it. And this is the part where I'm telling you they don't really understand how it works. We do very pretty drawings like this, right? And we show you that the air, as it passes up over the top of the wing, it speeds up because it wants to stay in contact with the other air, right? But we don't know why. Like, you've actually separated it far beyond the van der Waals distance.
Van der Waals is...
like the force at which atoms can actually act on each other. Like, it should be acting as a completely separate flow regime.
So like if
the bottom of the airfoil and the top of the airfoil should, in theory, have nothing to do with each other because you've separated from them by the airfoil. But in fact, they have everything to do with each other because it's incompressible flow, and the air over the top speeds up, and the air, because you made the air on the bottom slow down. And so that happens all the way up to the speed of sound. Now you look at, if you look at the top right, You see how it says
Top
on
right.
the thing, the label says 0.8 is less than Mach is less than 1, right? So you're in that range from 80% to 100% of the speed of sound. But look how the speed of sound still hits the speed of sound. It still hits Mach 1 at the top of the wing. It's like a limiting, and that hump that they're showing, that dotted line, is kind of a wall. There's a region there where every single particle, no matter what pressure it's at, is moving at the right at the speed of sound or just below. Like there's a line, right, where it has to cross the speed of sound, and that creates what we call a shock wave, and that starts to happen.
So that's when you hear like a
flow, even before you hit the speed of sound.
So that's when we start talking about like a sonic boom.
Yes, but even before you start talking about the sonic boom, the boom is when that shock wave breaks. Okay? This is actually what makes you fly. The tendency of the air to go up and over the top of the wing and accelerate to keep up with the air below the wing.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
You see that?
So
makes that pressure hump. It makes that hump of low pressure that lifts the wing from the top. That's why we call it lift and we don't call it push.
Wait, so so this dotted line here is is a low pressure hump.
Yeah, in there. See how it says Mach is less than 1?
Yeah.
And see how it says in front of that Mach is greater than 1?
So right here before the dotted line, Mach is less than 1.
It's a velocity line. For real, in this diagram, they're talking about velocity.
Let's just recap.
The streamlines talk about pressure.
Let's recap. So we're looking at.
Okay, go ahead.
Mach is less than 1. Mach means x.
The speed of sound.
The speed of sound. So
that's all it is.
The speed of sound here is less than 1. So we have not reached the speed of sound here.
Right.
Now, within the dotted line, Mach has reached the speed of sound.
Yeah, it actually tries to go over the speed of sound.
And then just on the other side, Mach
goes
is
back down
less
again.
than the speed of sound.
Yeah.
So we're creating a vacuum or a pressure here.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We're creating a vacuum, a low pressure region over, and the way that we're doing it is by forcing the air to speed up as it goes over the top of the wing.
Now, why doesn't this occur on the bottom of the airfoil as well?
Okay, what happens is it slows down. And it slows down because of drag and friction, right? So you push the bottom of the airfoil into the, think about it when you push, like if you held your hand flat and into the airflow going out a car, right? And then you tilt your hand and you feel
like a little bit up,
like pressure on the bottom of your hand, and it tries to make your hand lift, right?
Right.
What you're actually feeling is drag on your hand, making the air slow down as it goes underneath your hand. It feels like pressure. It feels like pushing, but what you're actually doing is dragging the air so that underneath your hand it goes slow. Underneath the airfoil it goes slow because it drags along. It has surface contact with the foil itself. And then on the top it can't because there's that low pressure region that it's trying to get into, but there's that region where it has to speed up, and as it speeds up it goes over, like it has momentum, and as it speeds up, the momentum keeps it from being close to the wing until it slows down a little bit, and then it can join back up with the other flow, right? Otherwise there would be a vacuum behind you.
Okay,
and there's not.
This is what's weird about it. So assuming the shape it's probably a couple of things here. The shape of the airfoil. So if I had a uniformly shaped airfoil, would I experience this Mach less than 1, Mach greater than 1, Mach less than 1 on either side of it?
Only if you change your angle of attack so that it's greater than 0.
Obviously,
So yes is the answer.
Obviously, an airplane's interested in going up.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
purposes
You're almost ready. I'll show you NACA airfoil in a minute. Okay. I'll talk about airfoil shape in a second. Let's get through the Mach 1 conversation.
All right.
Okay?
Moving along.
All right. So bottom left, diagram C, right?
Here we go. Yep.
We got Mach is over 1, but still less than about 20%. Okay, less than 1.2, right? But what happens is you get 2 shock waves. You get a bow shock and a trailing edge shock. And the bow shock looks kind of like incompressible flow, like below. See how it's M below 1, and then there's that dotted line. It's curved, right? So there's like it's still trying to flow nicely, but you've sped up so much that you've pushed that shock wave from figure B. You've kind of split it all the way forward, and you split it in half, right? It's the same shock wave as in diagram B as in diagram C. The dotted line, the front part of it, has split and is now the forward regime, and the back part of it has split off and moved all the way to the trailing edge and is now the trailing edge shock.
So it's turned into a U shape in front of the airfoil.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha.
So it's like it's actually doing 2 things, and that's why when you cross the speed of sound, it's very turbulent. There's a lot of shuddering because the air is trying to figure out, am I doing regular flow? Am I doing compressible flow? I'm shocking at the rear edge, so I'm compressing because my flow is so fast that I'm moving over this wing. I need to drop pressure, or I need to increase pressure so much, so quickly that I have to like create a wave, like a giant steep hill that I do it on. So and that's what a shock wave is. So and it's easier to see. Go to look at diagram D, right? Okay. Where Mach is greater than 1.2. So you're well above the speed. You're more than 20% above the speed of sound now. And the shock has completely moved forward. All of it now. The trailing edge shock has moved to the front of the foil. It's completely linear, right? It's a straight line. As soon as the air hits it, it immediately changes pressure and speed, right? As it goes.
Okay. So there's no like wave effect. If we go back up to the upper left,
right? There's no wave effect anymore.
Our first airfoil,
and the difference is the flow is now compressible, whereas before it was incompressible. All the way up to this point, the speed of sound, okay? All the way up to this point, the air pressure was still pretty much the air pressure. Right. That's why the wing flies. Like you're looking at very tiny differences.
So we're looking at the first diagram.
Right. You go back to diagram A.
Diagram A, where there are.
If you measured the pressure on the top of the wing and the bottom of the wing in incompressible flow, the pressure differences are very, very. They're a few psi.
Let's take this.
Okay. You might have.
Cheers.
100 psi on the bottom of the wing, just fast, and but you still only have like 95 pounds on the.
Yeah, you basically.
The difference is really only like it's very small.
You're swinging your arm through the air in the living room.
I mean, basically, yeah.
Particle
but when you exceed the speed of when you exceed the speed of sound,
you're displacing air particles, basically.
You're actually making the pressure go up. That's why, like, you do this in your air compressor. So when you run an air compressor, is it quiet? Can you compress air quietly? No, you fucking can't. It makes a lot of noise. And the reason is, to get air to compress, I have to break the sound barrier with it. Basically.
Wait a minute.
That's to make air compress, I have to break the sound barrier with it. Because otherwise, the particles won't get any closer together.
All right.
So when you, All right.
Wait,
when I went to,
whoa, hang
all right,
on.
I'll explain it to you in reverse in a way that makes you understand it.
All right.
When I went to college, I had a partner that I had to do my senior project with, and he did fluids as the same as me. And when our project was, we built an airfoil, right? And we made it fly in the wind tunnel, and we took pretty pictures and made things of the streamlines and all that stuff. But then I left to go build submarines, and he stayed to get a master's degree. And so I would talk to him a couple of years after. I would talk to him every once in a while by email. I'd be like, "What are you working on?" Because he was doing, like, if I had stayed, I would probably still be partners with him, and we would have been working on the same thing again. You know what I mean? And so I was kind of like learning what he was learning from his master's degree, right? At the same time as he was, except that he was way better at the math than I was. And what he was doing for his master's degree was studying compressible flow now. Like we had done incompressible flow as as bachelors, right? And now for his master's, he was doing compressible flow. And to do that, I was like, well, how are you studying compressible flow at WPI? Because I'm thinking you got to fly an airplane. He's like, oh, we got a giant bottle in the basement, and we fill it up with an air compressor, right? It's a giant pressure bottle, just like, and you can fill it up to like 6,000 PSI, right? And then we put a nozzle on it, and when we turn the valve, it expands, and it's going so fast because it's at such incredibly high pressure, and I can put it through an orifice plate and drop the pressure instantly, and I get a shock wave at the plate. I get a supersonic shock wave, and I can take pictures of it as it flows through the nozzle because the nozzle's made of plexiglass.
We need to take pictures.
So that's how he did it.
One of them fucking high-speed cameras.
Yeah, he got a high-speed camera, and you can even do it with a video camera because the reason that he could do it with a video camera or a regular camera was because that bottle was 10 feet in diameter and 25 feet long and sitting in a giant steel. Had enough volume. Are you ready for this? It had enough volume to do supersonic flow for like 45 seconds.
We can take a picture of me farting.
It's kind of like that, but think how long you would have to be
farting
at high pressure to have us fart that was supersonic for 45 seconds.
High pressure.
That's a long time.
I don't know.
That's a lot of air.
What's the longest fart you've had? Because I feel like I've had a fart.
I feel like I'm losing you on the fluids discussion.
That's a long fart. You ever have like a really long fart?
All right, but let me finish because I'll bring it around to the original point, which is they don't know why wings fly.
Okay.
So he did all this work, right? He filled up the bottle a bunch of times, and he took pictures of the air coming out and pictures of the shock waves, right? And he tried to use math to show that's what we do. Like, we take pictures of reality, and then we draw it with math, and we try and make the math match the results. And when the math doesn't match the results, you got to explain why. Right? And over and over and over again, he kept getting, in this very small and closely controlled situation, he kept getting it so that the math didn't match the reality. And what he found out was that if you added a small factor at one point, a coefficient to the formula, and in math, coefficients mean we don't know. Like, you add them to formulas because you say there's a factor that we don't understand that seems to apply. And it changes the result in reality, right, in a way that we can't really quantify. You get it with friction a lot. You just write factors, right? And it's based on material or something, right? That we don't really understand, but it's a mathematician admitting that he doesn't understand something. Or it's too complicated to put in, right? It would be like the one for friction, the friction coefficient, C sub F, is so complicated that it's like a whole novel in and of itself to figure out what it is. Like, you couldn't represent it with a very simple little equation.
Jesus
But
Christ,
you can have
put your hand out
tables
the
of
window.
you can have tables of it. You can know what they are, various materials sliding on other materials in various conditions, and you can make a coefficient that says, if you use this coefficient, then the math will come out right. And because what this coefficient does is it explains the material. Well, he had to make a coefficient for airflow through a nozzle. Okay?
Here we go. Right?
It got submitted for peer review and fucking accepted, and it's part of the literature now. So he's actually, basically, he did a little bit of the work to help understand why or where the part of that we don't understand in compressible flow of why wings fly, that we still don't 100% understand.
And now we can proceed to figure C, right?
Which, well, we're already kind of past. Well, sort of, because C is kind of the turbulence zone where we don't really understand what's going on there. And what it really is figure A that we don't understand. Okay? We actually understand compressible flow pretty well.
Yeah,
like,
it looks like a penis.
If you push on it,
like a sperm
we're really good at.
It's like a sperm flying through the universe. It doesn't really
mechanical energy transfer, which is really what compressible flow is. Very energetic. It takes a lot of heat and energy to get you moving that fast, or to get the air moving that fast. You have to do a lot of work, or you get a lot of work out of it when it flows like that. Like, if you have compressed air, you can do a lot of work with compressed air.
Oh, like thermodynamics?
So yeah, it's thermodynamics. So you but you can fly.
I can fly.
With you can lift hundreds of pounds in the air in incompressible flow.
I can fly if I believe I can.
Very, very little work. Spiders fly. Spiders fly pretty much for free. They just blow out some silk and they blow on the wind and they fucking fly, dude. That's flight. Okay? That's using the air pressure and airflow to carry you off the grounds and do transport. That's the definition of flight. And it uses exactly the same math and flight mechanics as an airplane. Exactly the same. Okay? He's using the drag created by the air going by to create lift.
Flying squirrels and shit.
Right? Flying squirrels, all that shit.
Just got just enough lift to get...
very birds.
Yeah.
Okay? The real goal of flight is to fly like a bird. Under your own power.
The real goal is
how do you fly?
Well, look, the real goal is to get over there where that delicious fucking cockroach is sitting.
Okay, but from an aerodynamic perspective.
Or I'm going to get how many people, what's the maximum amount of passengers you can get on a fucking flight nowadays? How big?
About 360 or something.
360?
Maybe 500 on the some version.
Is that a fact? Is that one of those ones that's been crashing? What are those? The Superman, the fucking airplanes that have been fucking. They got the flight correction shit where like you try to pull up, the computer says, "No, sir, you're going down," and they crash your.
It varies. The Airbus 380 is certified for up to 868 passengers, but that's a lot in a one-class configuration. That's a lot. Airbus says 544 is comfortable 3-class passenger configuration for marketing material. So if you have a first class and a business class, about 600 people usually.
I don't know.
Let's see what the Boeing.
Which one would you be comfortable flying on? Knife, as a aerospace engineer.
I've been on the Airbus. I've never been on the 787.
I've never been on any of them.
It's a much smaller plane, 250 to 330.
Like I said, my only experience with the plane was flying a Duchess into landing at Bishop fucking Airport.
Well, okay.
Fucking Michigan.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. All right, that you want to know about.
Lay it on me.
The control regime for a commercial airliner is one of the most complicated in the world, and the reason is because of those diagrams. Let's go back to the diagrams.
I'm looking at them.
Okay, that plane, all those planes, they fly in C all the time.
Ah.
Fast, right? They're right. Really, honestly, they're really in B.
So
Okay, they're right below.
You
They're
hear
moving about 600 miles an hour.
Mach greater than 1 just in front of them.
And what that does is...
Oh, look, can we talk about contrails?
Not yet.
No, okay.
We will, but not yet. When they fly very fast, and they're almost at the speed of sound. And so you see how in diagram B, when almost at the speed of sound, there is some part of the air moving over the top of your wing that's actually at the speed of sound. And so then you see when you get very close, which they do, 680 miles an hour, they're very fast, almost at the speed of sound. They're at like Mach 0.9, right? You start to get that turbulent separation of the shock waves. And so what you want when you're at 35,000 feet and 700 miles an hour, 750 really, even though they're actually moving over the speed of sound at sea level, which is 650, they're doing about 750 miles an hour. It's still about Mach 0.9 because the air is so thin up there and the pressure is so low that's why we do Mach numbers. It's relatively, to understand flow.
How do you calculate when the air's thinner?
It's a ratio of pressure differences.
Jesus, Jiminy fucking Christmas.
Math, man. You do math.
Math, man. Math, man. So,
you do math.
When the lady's coming around,
a wing, it's a very different, and it's very, very different flow than when they're doing 150 or 200 or 300 miles an hour, and they're coming in for a landing, right? And they're trying to slow down, and it's a very different wing. So that's why airliners do very complicated things with their wings, and they flap them, right? They have flaps on the back.
Yep.
And on the trailing edges that change the shape and lift of the wing. Sometimes it just makes it longer, but they can actually bend down and create more drag, which creates more lift, which makes the flow on the top of the wing go even faster.
Briefly, how flap works.
All a flap does is increase your drag.
So
and the increase in your drag on the bottom of the wing makes you have more lift on the top of the wing.
On the back side of the wing, there are things called flaps.
Yep. So they slow you down, but they create lift at the same time.
Flaps can either point upward, flaps can point downward. And what they do is they...
On an airplane is they point down.
Drag to point
so they make
upward
drag
or downward.
Right? Normally they make drag. They probably, in the high-speed wings, can feather them up a little bit to optimize where the shock wave is, but the trailing edge is where the shock wave will exist anyway, so it's probably just level. But on airplanes, it's not like a car. On a car, your foil goes up because you want the drag to push the rear end of the vehicle down so that you have more traction. On a plane, you want to push up on the bottom of the wing so that you have more lift, right? And what you're actually doing is you're making the air go faster over the top of the wing, so it creates more low pressure above and behind the wing, which drags you and slows you down, but at the same time lifts you. Uh-oh, it says here. So
now
what happened with the 787, before we get to Contrails, is that when they transitioned from being in low pressure, low speed regime, takeoff, namely, the computer takes over and it sort of balances those forces, like to keep the flaps from flapping. Thank you. And making like a bunch of vibration and spoiling your lift and making you fall from the sky, right? It has a controller that controls the flaps, and the leading edge too often has flaps. days to make the wing longer. The chord of the wing is longer, and so you get more lift at low speed. And that the computer controls all that.
So now you gotta fucking land.
And so now you got to take off.
Well,
and you gotta retract all those flaps in a nice orderly fashion.
I thought
As
we were
your
landing.
speed increases and the pressure drops and you climb for altitude, you have to like nice and neatly pull all those flaps back in without spoiling your lift. And what you're actually doing is reducing your lift, right? And reducing your drag so that you can go faster. And if you don't do that at exactly the right speed, you'll spoil your lift too fucking soon and you'll fall out of the fucking sky. And then the controller will be like, oh shit, you're falling out of the sky. You need more flaps, and we'll extend your flaps to try and give you more lift.
Or you could be these motherfuckers lately.
No, what I'm telling you is what is happening when these motherfuckers are falling out of the sky. The computer is not balancing the flight regime between low speed, high lift, and high speed, low lift. And it's fluttering between the two and completely spoiling the lift on the wing, and it's crashing the planes. And that's the problem. And the problem is that if you don't, like, apparently, haven't really looked into it, but if you don't like exactly initiate the procedure and there's a thing you're supposed to do when it starts fluttering, blah, 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 and they didn't train pilots on how to handle it.
Welcome to Valhalla, motherfuckers!
And do what they think is the right thing, and they crash the plane.
Jesus fucking Christ!
Sorry.
Wow!
One of the things about speaking correctly is that it is sometimes necessary to speak completely.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that. That's a fine attribute for a person.
I'm gonna eat pizza. Go ahead and talk.
Oblique shock. Let's move on to the last.
The last one is when you're going very, very fast.
Now we're talking about fucking fighter jet or some shit, right?
Yeah. Mach greater than 5.
Bang!
You're actually talking about
F-14
you're actually talking about
Tomcat pilot. Bang! Flying through the sky.
No.
Gonna shoot down some MiG-23s.
No. That Tomcat pilot is still pretty much in D. He can get to about Mach 2, I think, 1.5 or 2. But even the best fighter aircraft don't break Mach 3. When they're talking about Mach greater than 5, they're talking about.
The button for like afterburners.
Nah, you're talking about air compressors. The only place you're getting Mach greater than 5 is air compressors, the outflow of an air compressor, or like the space shuttle.
Who's flying? Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about Mach 1.2?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about? Who's flying at Mach 1.2? What planes are flying at Mach 1.2?
Concorde, F-14, F-15, F-16, MiG-28.
Are they still running Concordes?
No, but it could go that fast.
Jesus Christ. I remember having micro machines. I had the little Concorde. Do you remember that? F-15s?
I wonder. Hold on.
You gonna check your micro machines collection?
I'm gonna check. Actually, I don't. What the new Dreamliners are running at?
I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly what I said. Exactly what I fucking said.
Jesus Christ! It's like
DMO, mean velocity. Okay, mean velocity, Mach 0.9. It's exactly what I fucking said. They're operating in a very turbulent region. Go very, very fast.
Well, that's just 1.2.
But without, see, it takes a lot of energy to go faster than it sounds. It's like they're trying to operate in diagram C all the time because diagram D is very expensive and diagram B is very expensive. So they think that in C, they can optimize, see, this is engineering. They can optimize speed versus fuel in that region, okay, and get the most out of these wings. Oh, and now is the time to show you both a NACA airfoil.
You're going to show a new diagram?
I'm going to show you. I'll try and give you one that's got an array. NACA is like National Aeronautical something, and every wing. Oh, here's a nice. NACA isn't all wings, but we have a series of numbers that we name wings by that you should know exists. So if you look at this image, this is various styles of wings. Some of these look like helicopters.
Looks like some fucking nerds just drew some
That
teardrops.
top one looks like a helicopter wing
Looks
to me.
like a bunch of fucking emo nerds drew some teardrops. So they're trying
Yeah.
They're practicing doing
But see that Eiffel 10? See that Eiffel 10? That's basically a flat plate with a little bend in it. Yeah, that's a high-speed wing.
What does an anime eye look like?
A standard NACA airfoil.
I'm trying to draw anime characters on my account on DeviantArt, and I just don't know what an anime eye shape should look like.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. The Epler. There's the Epler, the 625, the Wortman FX2.
Right, which is a lot of information, a lot of names. So what they did in like the 50s is they did this. Let's see if it. Actually, click on that one for the picture. Yeah, click on that one for the picture. Because you see these where it's L, E, I, and T. They show you the camber line, the profile chord, the distance from the point to the midpoint. Like, so then NACA airfoils all have a number. They're NACA, and there's a 4-digit number, and each digit is one of these dimensions, right? So they standardized how you talk about airfoils by making what they call a NACA number, and they have like NACA 1040, NACA 4040, NACA 4575, like all these weird numbers, but the numbers mean LT, E, and I. The overall length, the length to the midpoint, the height of the half height of the core, and the overall height of the thickness. So like, and they tell you everything that you need to know about they're all the pertinent mathematical numbers to the airfoil. Everything else is cosmetic. And some, like when people put these little curves in the end, like this is a standard airfoil based on basically an airfoil that was even. If that dotted line in the middle was flat, it would be even on both sides. It's a standard profile, and then we bend it one way or another, and we bend it and make it longer. And that's so that we can talk about wings, right? Now I'll show you what modern jetliner wing at full extension looks like, so that you can see.
I'm gonna end up ordering a pizza.
Yeah, we did.
Did
there's a pretty good one. Oh, here's okay, here's the one that will show both leading and trailing edge flaps and wingtip flaps. So look at this one.
Got your wingtip flaps right here.
Okay. So see how
that looks like a cyborg grabbing something.
That's a Boeing. That's an Airbus.
That's a giant cyborg grabbing a smaller cyborg. And
kinda.
He's crying.
That's an Airbus 300. That's a commercial. That's a modern commercial airliner. Okay. So you see the front of the wing is on the left, the back of the wing is on the right. That right? You see the jet engine there.
I don't see any wings anywhere. I see a giant cyborg.
See how
baby cyborg.
All right, on the left side, you see how the flap is extended. Now it's in extended position. You can see the little recess that it fits into when it's not extended, and you can see the little arm that push out. And all leading edge flaps do is basically they push out straight and they make the wing longer, right? So they make lift by making the actual length of the wing be longer. And then the trailing edge flaps, see there, they got the trailing edge flaps, they're actually curving down. They work by making more drag.
These are all flaps.
So those are flaps.
Like, things on the right-hand side of the thing are all flaps.
They're flaps.
Deploy.
And I bet you that the little bulges there are servo motors and structural components that keep the flaps from breaking off the fucking wing.